President of the United States, we'd build a wall on Mexico's soil. Jeremy.
Okay, 2 questions. First one, because my wife's voice doesn't travel.
Don't blame her.
What would you do about the CMS mandate for medical workers in Texas? And the second question is, how do we own our homes after we finish paying our mortgages off?
Well, the first thing, as far as the mandates have got to be illegal. We've got to pass legislation that says it's illegal, but there's got to be legislation, as we were talking a little while ago, there's got to be legislation that has teeth on it. If you're going to do business on the soil of Texas, then we have to be able to penalize you if you're going to disobey our laws. I understand that you have global companies out there. You also have folks with federal funding, things like that. You got to make sure that if you're going to do business in Texas, that there are ramifications when you disobey our laws. We've got to pass that legislation. We've got to find some really smart people who are able to write that legislation right the first time and get it done, and then actually pass it through, because executive orders aren't going to work. This is medical rape, folks. I should not have to have a medical procedure in order to go to work in this state. You can't do that. You shouldn't have to do that. That is a violation of God's order. I mean, if you want to know the truth. And can you imagine, you ladies, can you imagine a male employer walking up to you saying, hey, you know, if you're going to keep working here, you got to do something for me? There'd be lawsuits through the roof. But that's exactly what's going on in terms of these jabs. We've got to stop it, but it's got to be done through legislation, not EOs. To your point, as far as property taxes are concerned, we can't just go in there and just snatch property taxes out, because it's like a cancer that has grown around vital organs. What we've got to do is we've got to reduce property taxes immediately with the goal of diminishing them to nothing. Now, we're still a low property state, a low tax state. I don't believe in taxes at all. I really don't. I believe incentivizing private companies, innovators, engineers. You know, people say, well, who's going to maintain the roads? I promise you there's people around here smart enough to make the ground flat for you to be able to drive on it, rather than continually depending on the government to do a mediocre job. You've driven on the roads in Texas. They're rough. Surely somebody could take that money that's getting caught up in bureaucracy and do a better job on the private sector. Abilene's bad. Louisiana's bad, but I can't do anything about them. But what we've got to do is we've got to take the surplus and we've got to buy down the property taxes. We keep talking about this surplus. We got to cut the spending. I've already described how bad the spending is out there. We got to cut that spending. We got to make sure that these appraisal districts, the appraisals are through the roof. It's insane. The rates are continually going up. People are constantly having to file these deals. I mean, I got my buddy in Fort Worth. He files 26,000 petitions a year on property taxes. This is insane. There's no reason why we can't get rid of this immoral property tax, and it is immoral. God told his people in the Old Testament that he would not tax their land because it was his promise to their children and their children's children. And I keep telling people, I said, if the Israelites 6,000 years ago could navigate around property taxes, then surely the sharpest economic, fiscal, conservative minds in the state of Texas ought to be able to find a way to do the same thing. But there's a reason they keep doing this in the name of property taxes, because it's so much money for the state. But it's the wrong, ill-gained money. Add 1.5 to sales tax. Add 0.5 percentage point to gas tax. Move to a consumption tax or even a value-added tax. But you can move all the percentage points and all of the decimal points you want, but as long as we're continually putting immoral people who do not understand the value of a dollar, and certainly don't understand it or value it because it's not their money, it's yours, we keep putting those people in these appointed positions, we're going to continue having that problem. We're going to continue to see ISDs with higher bonds and higher debts. As a state, we've got to start penalizing those ISDs who do that. There's no reason that your son needs to play in a high school football stadium that costs $60 million. Because once they get that money from you, they're not going to reduce that tax rate. They've already known they can get it from you. They're going to keep getting it. But reward those ISDs who keep those bonds and those debts low. We can do that. If a college wants to build a stadium, they call them the boosters. I say do the same thing at every level. Let's raise the money for the things that we want to do. I don't believe in ungodly taxation. I think it's wrong. But we ought to be able to give you the right through consumption or value-added tax to be able to participate in that taxation if you want to. So the only way you're getting taxed is if you choose to go buy a commodity. You don't have to do it. We should make sure. Now, right now, you do get somewhat of a cap when you're 65. You should, at the age of 65, you shouldn't be paying property taxes at all. Right now, our military members, we've got all these rates of how much they're not going to pay based on disabilities and all these things. Our veterans should not be paying property taxes right now. Absolutely not. They served. They gave their lives. They came home scarred. You men, you women, you know what I'm talking about. And we're going to force them to rent their property for the rest of their lives. Absolutely not. Let me tell you something. All 50 states have some form of property tax. We rank 6th out of 50. We got to cut it. We've got to cut it immediately, but we've got to have a continuing, ongoing strategy to get it diminished down to nothing. Now, will that ever be a reality? We'll see. But I think we need to start in that right direction. Cut that spending, buy down that property tax. Let's get it lower immediately, and then let's go from there.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the current administration is doing nothing about the illegal immigrants that are coming across the border into our great state of Texas, right? We are being flooded.
Invaded.
We are being invaded.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we are being invaded. Absolutely. Governor Abbott has not done near enough. There are things in our Constitution for the state of Texas that he could have implemented.
Right.
He has not done that. What would you do?
Well, again, Article 4, Section 7, Article 1, Section 10, the governor becomes the commander-in-chief. He has the ability in the case of the federal government bailing out in a case of invasion to be able to step up and to use the full force of military might that is available to him throughout the state of Texas, which includes if the National Guard is pulled away by the feds, we still have the State Guard, we still have the militias, we still have that ability to fight back. We have our veterans. But let's make sure that they understand with first of all, economic sanctions on Mexico. We make commerce harder to do as long as they're not stopping, which is a Trump-era policy. Trump he made it very hard for Mexico to do business while he was in office. That's why they forced Joe Biden to go back to that, because it worked. I've met several times with Joe Frank Martinez, who's the sheriff down in Valverde County. He's a Democrat, but he admits he didn't like the Trump administration, but they got the job done. We've got to get back to that. He voted for this administration, he admits, but he doesn't like it. Liberals are nuts. But we've got to be able to enforce that. They've got to know that there's sanctions economically. There's also going to be might militarily. I mentioned the banking thing. We've got to pressure. And by the way, let me say this. Texas, our size, our economy, our population, our leverage, we have the ability to hold Washington, D.C.'s feet to the fire. America needs Texas far more than Texas needs America. So, that being said, we can leverage Washington, D.C. and push them to name these cartels narco-terrorists, international terrorists. That way we can employ the full force of military against them when we are encroached. At the end of the day, there's going to be bloodshed. There already is bloodshed. The problem is the bloodshed of innocence. At what point in time are we going to hold these people accountable? Because like I said, no one's coming across that river without the help of the cartels. No one. So we've got to stop this. We've got to make Mexico stop it. As I said, we've got to disincentivize the reason they're coming. There's no reason why we should be paying health care, welfare, education, college education for illegals. Absolutely not. You saw what Gavin Newsom did this past week when he said that all 1.1 million illegals that they know about in California, they're going to give them free health care. Free health care. Remember, folks, there's no such thing as government funded. But that's exactly what we're going to wind up doing here in Texas with another administration from Greg Abbott. Mark my words. They love open borders. I read a study that was done in 2018, and then they revised it in 2020, but they said the same thing. They said that an open border would incentivize the global economy by $100 trillion. Now, I don't believe that number. It's a made-up number. Start throwing around words like trillion, and people's brain goes blank. But as I said earlier, Republicans, career politicians love open borders, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. We've got to shut that down and disincentivize them. Enforce that law that's on the books. Yes, sir.
You mentioned tyranny a number of times, which is the federal government breaking its law against us. Our Second Amendment right gives us the ability to fight tyranny.
Right.
If you're the government, at what point would you allow your people to take arms against the federal government?
Well, I like the one slow clap back there, like the end of an 80s movie. Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of freedom. That's the beauty of freedom.
I don't want my daughter to do it. I would rather stand up before her.
Well, let me tell you, they're already wanting to draft your daughter. Federal government is.
I know they are, and I don't appreciate it.
You shouldn't. So basically, your question is, when do we get to use the bullets? Well, that's the beauty of a free society. You don't need permission, okay? And now listen. I'm going to live free and I'm going to die free. I'm unvaccinated. I plan to remain unvaccinated. I don't care if you've been vaccinated. I don't care. That's your business. I have no intention of getting vaccinated. I'm willing to take the risk. I don't want my face melting off. But I promise you, you come and try to force me to take your juice, and you're getting shot, most likely. Because you're just not going to violate my body. If you believe in the sanctity of the nation's borders, of the state's borders, how much more do we believe in the sanctity of the border of the human body? This is where we're at when it comes to a fight. The globalists have already ceded Washington, D.C. away from the Constitution in America. That's why I support the Texan bill. I do believe in House Bill 1349. Now, most people don't understand what Texan means. That doesn't mean we secede. It means we are able to determine our own legislative legacy, destiny, and future. That means if they truly become tyrants and they start encroaching our values, then what we do is we say, okay, thanks for your service, America, but we're done with you. Amen. We're giving America $165 billion a year. We're giving that to D.C. D.C. gives us a little bit back. That's like going to the clinic, giving 100% of your blood. They give you 45% back, smack you on the rear end, and tell you they hope you feel good tomorrow. That's what D.C. is doing to Texas right now. There's a big old sucking sound. That's $165 billion being siphoned out of your pocket to D.C. that does not have your interest right now. That's how we put D.C. back on track. With that type of leverage. We supply 40% of this nation's oil. We supply 26% of this nation's marketable natural gas. We are a global leader in energy, but yet our power grid shut down last February. We're the number 2 producer of lignite coal on the planet. We got not good coal, but if you light it up, it burns. And our coal plants are lying dormant. Last February, if they weren't dormant, we could have turned the knob and everybody would have been toasty. And people got on social media and came at me and said, you poor Texans, you can't handle a little cold outside. I said, it's not that it was cold outside, it was cold inside. People were dying in their houses. It was cold. That's the kind of stuff, and by the way, that was a complete mismanagement on the part of Greg Abbott. And it was being administrated by people who weren't in the state of Texas, and some people weren't even in America. That's got to change. We're a global leader in energy. We're a wealthy, wealthy state. And what are we doing? We're selling out to China. China owns our land. They own 300,000 acres of wind farms next to the Air Force Base down outside of Del Rio. The Sixes Ranch, the major owner of the Sixes Ranch now is backed by Chinese money. Yellowstone, the show you love, is a Chinese show. It's Rip Wheeler speaks Mandarin. This is a true story. Who do you think owns Paramount? Do you know that the Rodeo Association, I can list all the different things, everything from the Barrel Racing Association, they're all backed by Chinese money. They own our Western heritage in Texas. See, the Chinese knew that if they wanted to truly get our heritage, that John Wayne heartbeat of America is owned by the Chinese now. Greg Abbott sent the CCP a letter of congratulations on their 70th anniversary of ruling China.
He's also raising money in California right now.
He's out there getting $25,000. Y'all got off cheap. He's in Orange County right now raising money, $5,000 a ticket all the way up to $25,000 for a VIP to go in there and sit with him and hang out with him in Orange County, California. Now, he won't come to a debate with us, but he'll go to California and raise money. It is. It is BS. So to your point, yeah, at some point in time, we push back, we fight back, we leverage ourselves, and that's what we do. And we don't have to make bullets start flying in order to make sure that we establish our sovereignty right now, even as Americans. But if it comes to it, we remind Washington, D.C. that they don't have the power over us like we have the power over them. And by the way, just because stuff like that doesn't mean we're talking about going to war. Again, Article 1, Section 2 says that when that government no longer represents you, you have the ability to alter or abolish that. That is written in your Constitution in the state of Texas.
Would you be in favor of removing the legislators' immunity clause so they cannot enforce these unconstitutional mandates on us?
100%. Absolutely. Look, these guys are little God players. We're creating these tyrants, these little dictators, and they're turning them loose. They don't have your priorities at hand. We saw that in the 87th legislative session. The GOP gave them 8 priorities. They nominally passed 2. They don't care about your priorities. Greg Abbott, I'm shocked. I thought Greg Abbott was going to call a 4th session sometime around January 4th to deal with election integrity, because Donald Trump, when he endorsed him, said it's on the condition of you dealing with election integrity. And he hasn't done it yet. And I was hoping that he would put, at least as a footnote, an honorable mention about these vaccine mandates. But he hasn't done either one. That's a problem. And that's the sign of a dictator who's basically thumbing his nose even at Donald Trump's endorsement. Which is interesting to me. Trump's coming here to Montgomery County, on the 29th. And it makes me wonder why he's coming to Conroe. Because, it's not like there's any chance of him not getting support here. So I'm interested to see what's going on between him and Abbott in regards to that. Yes?
So Trump's coming here?
Yes.
Are you going to be with Trump?
As it stands, no. As it stands right now, I'm supposed to be on the border on the 29th. So we'll see whether or not I'm here. I don't have Trump's endorsement, but nobody that's running against an incumbent Republican has Trump's endorsement, because Trump has the policy of only endorsing incumbent Republicans, and that's unfortunate because the wrong people are in Donald Trump's ear. It's just the way it is. Trump wants to run in 24. He's going to make sure that those incumbents who statistically have a chance of being in office are going to be able to give him that support.
So you know that for sure? He's running in 24.
I don't know that for sure.
Abbott will be here the 29th because he's at Mattress Max in Richmond.
He's going to be at Mattress Max.
At 10 o'clock on the 30th because we're going to be.
Yeah. Now, could I be on that stage with Trump? I could be. I'm close enough and connected, but I want to make sure that I'm where I need to be as far as the priorities of Texas are concerned. I've been to a lot of Trump rallies, but I'm more concerned right now with what's going on the border.
And I get that.
Talking about the border, are you willing to shut down the roads leading?
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. That's what I said earlier. Whenever you've got 25 bridges coming across, we've got to make sure, and then what we can control are those highways. The federal government doesn't control the highways, we do. So we've got the ability. And by the way, Abbott tried to do something like that, and Merrick Garland shut him down, and Abbott bent over backwards to make sure he didn't get sued. So we can visit, we can talk, we can hang out. I appreciate you guys. There's beer and barbecue and fires. Yes, sir.
Hey, Chad,
Hang on, wait a second.
can we only agree
Well, we can as long as they're we can bring jobs.
And also, for 1 minute, about getting rid of the mail-in voting.
Yeah, well, he asked about bringing in jobs from other states. I'm more concerned with the jobs that are in the state first. We do, as long as they're not coming in with the wrong ideologies. Right now, he's bringing in Chinese businesses, he's bringing in Asian businesses, he's bringing in Silicon Valley businesses. We have to make this a place that, one, is friendly to the small business, but also friendly to the constitutional business. Now, I want to throw a phrase out there that I don't want to gloss over. We've got to become a constitutional sanctuary state. People come in here to do business, they've got to obey the Constitution. That's got to be the guideline. They don't come in here with weird ideologies. So to that degree, we make it very welcoming to people who are willing to do that. If I could get away with it, legally, and you moved to this state from California, I'd make it so that you had to wait 4 years before you could vote. That's what I'd like to do. That's how much I care about it. Because they don't have the same spirit of Texas that I was talking about. So to that degree, yes, we have to make this a great place to do business. Look, if we're giving $1 billion break to a South Korean company to come in here and do business, how much more can we do to American valued companies that can come in here and do it?
Yeah, but starting here in Texas, crazy, all right? Bringing other businesses and other things in here, and then maybe they might be able to start to do some things here instead of.
Well, and 100%, and we've got to do that. We've got to disincentivize the reason why we're doing business with China. That's got to stop. I had somebody ask me months ago, they said, but all that money that comes from these businesses, I said, no, we're already a wealthy state. We have the ability to bring businesses in and do business here in the state that we don't have to rely on things like China. We don't have to do that.
So why don't they have some type of incentive to start manufacturing?
Well, that's exactly right. Why don't they? Why don't they have that incentive to do things like manufacturing? Why are we bailing out green energy companies who need to be, when their windmills break down and their solar panels are covered in ice and snow, why are we bailing them out? Why are we spending our money to bail these these private companies out when again, as I said earlier, we're making ideologies into policies and we're spending our hard-earned taxpayer dollars in order to bail these companies out? Bring companies in that are willing to stand on their own 2 feet, and whenever they fail, they bail themselves out or they go out of business. That's fair. That's the way it ought to be. I got a plan for those windmills. I hate them. But let's put them down on the border on top of the wall and let that be the last obstacle. You know what I mean? So, but as far as the mail-in voting, there doesn't need to be any mail-in voting. Absentee ballots under certain circumstances, we know, whether that's medical, whether that's deployed, whether, the situations like that, law enforcement, an infrastructure employee, a legal excuse for that to happen. I personally believe we ought to dump the entire voter rolls. We need a Secretary of State that would dump the entire voter rolls over a period of time, do it legally, do it legislatively, make every single person in the state go re-register to vote. You want to make it legal? Let's do it. 24-hour observation, making sure there's cameras on them, eyeballs on them, there's no ballot boxes or any kind of boxes being pulled out from underneath the table while the count's going on. There's no computers allowed on premise. There is no internet, certainly. There's no machines that are counting ballots. We do it with eyeballs, we do it with counts, and we do that thing under scrutiny. We're not going to put cardboard up on the window to make sure nobody's seeing what's going on. There's a lot with election integrity that's there.
Majority of people here like small business. What are you going to do for small business?
Well, that's what I was just saying to him. We've got to make sure that we're incentivizing small business first. Small business first. I believe that we've got to make an economy and we've got to make a culture that makes sure that people are rewarded. The small businesses were the ones who were hurt the worst in the pandemic when everything was shut down. And it goes all the way to the 51%ers, which was the bars and the music venues and those kind of things being deemed non-essential. But it spilled over to the small businesses, and it even affected things like going to church, going to the gym, going to weddings, going to funerals. We got to stop that kind of culture. We can't do that. The first thing we've got to do is we've got to make sure that these regulations that are making... Hey, listen, it's hard to do... I'm a small business owner. It is hard to do small business right now with all the regulations and the licensing. It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to get a license to cut hair. You might be a great hairdresser and terrible at filling out applications. We got to make this process a whole lot easier to be able to go out and make money. So it's a matter, we're being over-regulated, especially when it comes to small business. We got to stop that and make an environment where people can work. Back here in the back. No, you good? You're just excited. All right. Yes, sir.
What would your terms on term limits be?
So there shouldn't be, I believe in term limits. I don't believe in this just ongoing. I don't think as governor, I don't think you should be able to serve more than 3 terms. I think that should be the limit, and the only reason I believe that is because I think there are some situations that could lead to 10 or 12 years, things like property taxes, to truly get them alleviated. But there should be no more than 3 in the state of Texas. No more than 3. Prather2022.com. Thank you so much for hanging out. And for Carrie and Tony, God bless you guys for doing this. And Jeremy and Lauren and just so many folks that helped. You know, again, like I said, I could go all night long. I love this state. I've got a passion for the spirit of Texas. I'm that seed that was planted in the right soil, and for me, Texas was it. So let's keep that spirit of Texas alive. Thank you for everything that you guys are doing. And listen, I know there's a lot of folks out here, folks with the airlines and so on. I've talked to you various times. You're going through a lot. I'm praying for you. God bless you. And let's mean it when we say, God bless Texas. Amen. God bless Texas. Let's get a photo. Hey, let's get all y'all's drunk asses in here and take a picture. How about that?
I've seen a lot of places.